as it existed. This neighborhood came to my attention shortly after Mother of Mercy. And I thought about trying to change the name then, but did not do it. And then I was very impressed by a speech that Mitch Landrieu, the mayor of New Orleans, gave when he moved some Confederate statues. And then we had the unfortunate event in Charlottesville. And that's when we really decided at Precinct One, Carl and Dr. Blaylock Sloan, we were going to get this done. And then I stopped one day coming out to look at some of the flooding from Harvey. And this neighborhood was devastated. And so the staff and I decided that was not the time to do it. But when this came up, we figured, you know, let's go ahead and get this done. So there are a number of major substantive changes that we're trying to make in Harris County government as well, that confront old vestiges of discrimination and racism that have existed for too long. In this neighborhood, by the way, with our flood bond package, the equity guidelines that we put in place, and it is a long series of items in that formula. Social vulnerability is one of them. And because of that attempt to create equity, this neighborhood will get some of the relief against flooding that it has deserved for a very long time. I'm glad since I've been a commissioner, Carl and Deborah, we did go and resurface this street. So even if I didn't like the name of it, we have done everything we could to be inclusive with this neighborhood. The first name I came up with, and I mentioned this at Commissioner's Court, was Dolores Huerta. I know the history of this neighborhood, and it is, as the case with many neighborhoods throughout our community, one that has been in transition. Initially, it was predominantly a white area. Then it became an African-American area. Increasingly, it is becoming Hispanic. So I thought of Dolores Huerta's name, and we talked to her family. I did have a brief conversation with her. I did point out it's not a major thoroughfare. It's not in the city of Houston. It's in the unincorporated area. But I thought it would be a fitting tribute, and we came out and tried to develop consensus around that name. Then some of my friends, people that I've been close to and worked with for a very long time, thought the street was not significant enough to name it after Dolores Huerta and suggested some other names. And then some of the folks from this community had a series of names. I think there were names of two well-respected African-American educators from this side of our county. And so we just decided, instead of going through all of that, let's somebody on a call who didn't want the name changed of the street suggested we find a generic name. And I thought about that, and of course we tried Union Street. That would work, right? And then so we thought that we would try Unity Street. We thought that would work, but those wouldn't work because they are streets. So we came up with the name Unison. So I'm hoping that after this change today that we will be in unison. We all ought to do more to adequately reflect our history. I thought it would be a nice touch to bring one of our moving monuments out. We started these buses depicting various figures in American history. I think the first one we did, we thought of Rosa Parks, but couldn't work out all of the details with the Rosa Parks Foundation. Then I think we have one with Reverend Bill Lawson. We have one with Ann Richards. We have one with Mickey Leland. We have one with Dolores Huerta. I think that I want to announce to others that are coming. Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman. We have one with Harriet Tubman. But I thought Frederick Douglass would enjoy, after all these years, coming out, and it has such a message that resonates. If there's no struggle, there is no progress. So I want to thank the Harris County African American Historical Commission. Cultural Affairs Commission for helping. When we were trying to find a consensus, they were helpful. Deborah, I want to let you and Carl make a brief comment, and then we'll open it up to questions. Deborah first.
Good morning. Commissioner Ellis said it all. We need not commemorate persons who symbolize white supremacy and most of all, who wanted to uphold the institution of slavery, for which my ancestors were a part of. So I commend his efforts to rename this street. Thank you.
I also want to commend Commissioner Ellis for his leadership in making this effort successful, in getting the name change of Robert E. Lee. And what better name than Unison? We need to all work together in unison during these turbulent times here in America. Thank you so much for your support and your effort, Commissioner Ellis.
So we worked up a great statement. I won't read it. We will put it out. You will notice that probably someone who has an interest in history took the signs down, took the Robert E. Lee signs down for us. So those have been removed, and we thought about just for the optics of the day, we'd make another one, but I figured even Robert E. Lee's descendants are saying we don't need to honor what Mr. Lee did anymore. So we didn't do some signs to take them down today. But I'm glad you all came. Thank you for being here. If there are a couple of questions, I'll answer them, and if not, do you really want me to climb up that ladder? Any questions? I think that we've reached a point in our history in which we all ought to be willing to recognize that that fight for which the Civil War was held was an important one. And I'm glad that the other side lost. Slavery has been the bane of our existence for so long. I mean, not just in this country, but around the world. I mean, anybody who's a true student of history, and many people are not, in part because there were groups that went out and tried to rewrite it and glorify the cause for which people fought on the wrong side in the Civil War. So I think that they'll get over it in time. I think we ought to take down those Confederate monuments around the Texas State Capitol. I tried to do that for many years. I'm so proud of former Speaker Joe Strauss. He and I penned an op-ed. I think it ran in the Dallas Morning News some time ago. Some of the legislators advocating for it. You know, you can see on the national level, people in both parties are advocating that we change those names of military bases that are named after people who took up arms against America. So it's just wrong, and I want to give folks on this street an opportunity to be on the right side of history. So I think they'll just, I'm not doing this to get any political points, and if I get a few people angry with me, that's the political process. Thank you. Yes, sir. Well, we're working with them to go through that process. It's a fairly seamless process. It's not rocket science. It has happened before. I've done a telephonic meeting with them. My staff has reached out. We've knocked on doors. They'll get through it. If there's somebody out here that clearly cannot afford it, we'll see if we can find some resources, not government resources, to help them. But oftentimes when people just don't want to do something, they'll complain about the process, or they'll complain about something else, when what they're really angry about is one side lost the war, they were on the wrong side of history, and sometimes it's hard to admit that people just made a mistake.
We had another resident that addressed the fact, kind of addressed it, the flooding that they had for Harvey devastated the area, and nothing has been put in place yet for them to get some relief. How do you address that?
Well, let me tell you, the equity guidelines that Precinct One led the way on to put in the bond language were very important. It's interesting, some of the very people who would argue against changing the name of this street had no idea that the way flooding money was allocated for decades, since the early 80s, was based on the cost-benefit ratio. Nice phrase. But that means that that system was valuing property over people. That's why Greens, that's why Halls, that's why many of these neighborhoods that have historically been disadvantaged could never get access to those funds. So it's going to take time, but with this new court, there's so many vestiges of what this war was about that are still with us. This precinct fought to get the county to do a disparity study. Nice fancy phrase. What it showed was out of the $5 billion a year that Harris County spends, African Americans were getting 0.5% of the county's business. Overall, minorities and women, people of color and women, were getting 9% of the money. That means Harris County Contracting, as the Houston Chronicle said, I wouldn't be so blunt about it, they said it's a white man's game. In 2020, people still fighting the Civil War. So I want to make the point. I get it. In some ways, this change of this name is a small thing. It's symbolic. But symbols matter. But also from Precinct One, we're working on the big vestiges of discrimination that have existed for so long. And that's why so many people are angry. So with that, one more? You got one more? Yes, sir.
After this exchange on the street, are in your plans to have a special meeting with the residents of this area and try to listen to them about this change?
Well, we did. So obviously, we had an area of, the question was, have I met with people in this community? Yes. I mean, when I found out about this street, it was shortly after I became a county commissioner, 3.5 years ago. And when I found out about it, I just asked, what Confederate streets do we still have in Harris County? Lo and behold, they came back and they found one. I mean, you may have a Ellis Street. Could be named from the Ellis plantation, as far as I know. But the only one that was recognizable was Robert E. Lee. And it's in Precinct 1. So we came out, we started talking about it. My staff has canvassed the street. I come out here and ridden a bike one time. You know, a couple of Confederate flags were up, by the way, and I kind of figured by myself, maybe I ought to come back another day, you know, to go talk to them. We've called them. We've written them. We tried to develop a consensus around Miss Huerta's name. We did some educating of people in the community, including Hispanics, and let them know who Dolores Huerta is. Some of the comments I got were like people saying, we can't spell Huerta. And then we did a telephonic meeting. And not only did we call people to give them advance notice, we wrote them. So we've done quite a bit of this has been going on a long time now. I didn't know until I started on this path that someone who owned a charter school on this street advocated it some years ago, but couldn't get any attention. Look, I'm glad I had bipartisan support. All the members of the Commissioner's Court voted for this, but we've reached out, and it's as someone who honestly cannot afford it. It's fairly minor in terms of the cost. We'll work with them to get that done. I think I've asked, I don't think I can use county funds, but if somebody really falls in that category, we'll find someone to help them or see what we can do. All right, shall we? I know it's hot, and you all are too close together anyway. I thought we were pooling this. Shall we? You want me to walk up here first? If I don't fall and hold this stand, and I'll get on, unless somebody's trying to get me knocked down. So you see what it was, right? And what it will become. I can go up that side. Don't show how dumb I am. You're doing great. What's this?
glad Robert E. Lee lost. All right. Thank you, thank you. So, was that Univision film? I did put my Guayabera on. I put my Guayabera on. You climbing up there? You gonna tighten that car? Don't you fall. Don't let him fall.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Let's do this.
The long sleeves on so I don't
Yes, sir,
get that
let's do it.
sunburn other than on this bald head.
We did an ambulance awareness for the Hispanic community.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. I'll get some more video. Yeah. I'll get some more video. Put up some more signs so if you need more shot of ground without the proper surface there. So we're probably gonna go up to John Ralston, then go back across C King. Put up some other
Ahí está ya la de 11.